How's it going, guys? I'm Jared and welcome back to Talking Points. Now, I kind of promised myself I'd steer clear of these kind of topics, but this is a subject I feel really strongly about, and I think some of these words need to be said. With that in mind, I want to assure you guys that I'm approaching this with an insane degree of respect and admiration. Now, I know it's impossible to say anything on YouTube without pissing someone off, but I want to make it clear before we go forward that it's not my intention to insult anyone on any side of this debate, and I give my word that I'll conduct the following opinion piece in a manner befitting of this topic's serious nature. That being said, I welcome any comments for or against my views, as long as they're respectful to those on either side of the argument. So with that out of the way, let's take an honest look at false claims of racial discrimination in gaming. Racism, exclusionism, homophobia, and sexism. I don't think there's a person alive who truly feels like these injustices have been erased. Even in our modern, forward-thinking society, people are being treated poorly because of the family they were born to, their sexual identity, or the people they choose to love. Now, it goes without saying that bigotry like this needs to be wiped clean from the earth, but in doing so, I think we may be creating it where it doesn't exist. Today, we're going to take a look at a couple of examples of both game critics and gamers putting a racist tone on works that, in my opinion, had none. First, we'll start with a story that's been in the news a lot lately. As some of you may have heard, recently tempers have been flaring at Ubisoft's reveal of the cover art for the newest Far Cry game. The picture showing what appears to be the game's antagonist sitting on a throne surrounded by weapons, his hands smugly resting on a Himalayan man's head. For some reason, this is considered to be very offensive. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but I never saw this piece as racist propaganda. I mean, here we have a guy that's supposed to be evil, putting another person in danger. And the artist made sure to show the antagonist's smile, letting us know that he's having a good time while the Himalayan man is obviously in duress. This gets across the point that the guy is going to be evil, nothing else. This cover is just an attempt at following the popularity of Far Cry 3 by including the game's main enemy predominantly. But despite that, most seem to agree that the character's white appearance makes his position unacceptable. Unsurprisingly, these same dissenters had nothing to say when Far Cry 3's cover hit the web. Here we have a Hispanic man pointing a gun at a Caucasian man who has been buried up to his nose in sand. Can we see any similarities here? Side by side, we see that the two covers are almost identical as far as art, tone, and thematic appearance goes. Yet one is deemed more racially offensive than the other. In reality, neither of these covers are promoting racism. They're simply depicting the game's villain being a villain. And if you really feel that either of these covers are promoting racism, I honestly suggest you take a heartfelt inventory of your own prejudices and stop trying to project them onto others. Next up, we have a man who's infamous for his ability to act like an ass. This is Phil Fish, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with him. He created the indie hit Fez and showed many big-budget developers that it doesn't take a sum of millions to make a fun gaming experience. Unfortunately, he also made the comment that modern Japanese games suck. While this is a blanket statement that doesn't really take into account the thriving independent or doujin game market, I can't help but agree with it, at least partially. Now, I shouldn't have to point this fact out, but he was insulting video games being developed in Japan, and in no way is that a comment on that country's race. But there are people out there who need obvious facts like this spelled out for them. This guy has proven himself to be a dick to people all over the internet, but has never publicly shown himself to be a racist. While he may deserve the backlash he gets for his offensive tweets and psychotic position against reviewers and Let's Players, the guy did nothing to indicate any racial prejudice. Calling someone a racist is extremely insulting, and while Phil may deserve most of what he gets, I think this time he didn't. But if these recent examples aren't doing it for you, we can go back even further, to a certain scandal involving a certain survival horror franchise. Resident Evil 5, for those of you who chose not to play this watered-down version of an already watered-down game, stars series mainstay Chris Redfield as he tracks down Albert Wesker and a terrorist group who've gotten a hold of a bioorganic weapon that can turn people into mindless, bloodthirsty monsters. And the only problem with this premise, at least as far as many games journalists believe, is that it takes place in Africa, and Chris Redfield is Caucasian. Many heads in game journalism were quick to jump out in front of this one and loudly vocalize how inappropriate it was for a white character to be able to enter into combat with an African character. Even Adam Sessler, a man who I really look up to as a reviewer, was quick to condemn the game's trailer. Now, I shouldn't have to point this out, but this is ridiculous, guys. Nowhere is it said that being a part of one race forbids any negative contact with another. Capcom wasn't trying to produce an anti-African agenda or promote a racist ideal. They decided to set their new horror game in a politically unstable, often violent location that might, scare the player. At no point did I feel like a racist when I was mowing down Spaniards by the hundreds in Resident Evil 4, And conversely, there's nothing racist or insensitive about starting up a game of Streets of Rage, picking Adam Hunter, and proceeding to beat the piss out of your enemies who just so happen to be predominantly white. Resident Evil 5's depiction of native Africans is not a commentary on real-life Africans. It's a fictional representation of people being controlled by a parasite in their brains. Nothing more. Guys, listen, I realize it's important for us to let the racists of the world know that their archaic beliefs won't fly anymore. But if we brandish our pitchforks every time game characters of differing races are at odds, developers are going to start pigeonholing the creative process. Games will become less innovative and lose that edge that attracted us to them in the first place. As a Cuban American who speaks Spanish and Japanese, I'm about as far from a racist as you're likely to find. And as a victim of racial prejudice myself, I understand the importance of keeping a vigilant watch and speaking up against it. Listen guys, there's a lot of hate in this world, a lot of racist ideals. Getting rid of it's gonna be hard, so please don't make it harder by creating it where it doesn't exist. Jumping in a crowd and crying wolf every time a fictional character in a video game is made to deal with hardships at the same time as identifying as a particular race is hurting this medium. And it most certainly is scaring developers into retreating into cookie-cutter franchises that feature bland characters who dare not look like they belong to any specific race. Guys, we're better than this. Together we've accomplished great things, funded dream projects, taken part in the creation of real art. Don't let yourself become a part of what brings this medium down. By all means, continue fighting injustices like this, but keep an open mind. Form your own opinions before volleying insults at a developer. And above all, remember, a guilty person is always the first to accuse someone else of wrongdoing. Well, that got real serious for a second, huh? But now that you've made it to the end, rest assured we will be returning to your regularly scheduled game reviews. For you newcomers that I haven't offended and or driven away, feel free to click that subscribe button. And if you like what you saw here, I have a couple more episodes of talking points you might get into. As for the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.